Hello, welcome back, everyone. I'm very pleased to introduce for our next speaker, who is Nicholas Cope. Nicholas is an artist, author, and geometer, whose work is devoted to the Sophia Perennis, as embodied in symbolic geometry of both traditional art and ancient megalithic architecture. He'll speak today to us on nature and art as symbolic of the real. So I hand over to you, Nicholas.
Thank you, Stephen. I just wanted to say I found that very moving, Christine, the previous speaker. Yes, well, firstly, thank you for inviting me to take part. It's an interesting challenge speaking about art because I haven't really done it much before. Art should really speak for itself, being a visual language. But as I've been invited, I'll talk a little bit about what my art is trying to do. I'd like to start with this comment by Ananda Coomaraswamy. The mythical narrative is of timeless and placeless validity, true now, ever, and everywhere. What Coomaraswamy is implying is that there are fundamental principles which are valid at all times, in all places, and for all people. And in the short time, I think I've got 25 minutes, half an hour or so today, I'll show you my humble attempt to express some of that idea in my artwork. So this is an image, but I'll show you the full image a little later. The first artwork I'll show you is this one. In our world as it is currently, there's a veil hiding these principles, these eternal principles. We have to find a way through this material world to find these principles. These are just the kind of things which I attempt to show in my work. One of the principles is the notion of the center, the spiritual center, and how this relates to the circumference or periphery, or rather what these things represent, which is something I've spoken about before many times. The idea of the sun as representative of the center is a recurrent theme in my work. The sun, as in this example, is the symbolic source of spiritual light. All this most recent work I'll show you today was completed from just before lockdown until very recently. They are made as prints. To give you some idea of their size, this example I have printed around 2 or 3 feet across. There are many approaches to art. The least interesting, to me anyway, are the facts of its production, the techniques, materials, and media, etc. A lot of people are interested in how I make these. Even though it's necessary sometimes, I tend to keep away from that subject generally. I find it much more relevant and interesting to speak about the content, what the art is attempting to do. To start with, Black Elk can help us with this idea. And he said, I knew the real was yonder, and the darkened dream of it was here. So at the apparent level, we exist in an outer world, which is the darkened dream, as Black Elk says. And the real is yonder, it is somewhere else. We exist as shadows of the real, but at the same time, it is within us, we are it. This highlights the fact that this is all about a spiritual journey to find ourselves. We exist on the periphery, the outer material physical world. So I try to communicate in my art that which is more than that, that which is most universal, but also which is most innermost. The natural world is the source, and it is also the beginning of our journey. Nature can act as a symbol for the divine order. A quote by René Guénon, a French author from the last century. In nature, the sensible can symbolize the supra-sensible. The entire natural order can in its turn be a symbol for the divine order. In the terms which Guénon is using, this is a journey from the sensible physical world to that of the suprasensible realities. Art should ideally be able to reconcile our seemingly contradictory outer experience with this inner world. A recurring idea in my artwork is the idea of the doorway, or if you prefer a portal, a doorway leading from one situation to the next, from this world to the world of higher principles. I'm not really going to talk about the titles of these works, but this one I call the Pleiades. You can see the Pleiades at the top. This is an image that you may see 2 or 3 times today. The symbolism of this journey is that we are individuals, and on one level we are separate and disconnected, but there is still the motionless center. It is the goal of all spirituality to find this still center within us. Chang Tzu, a Taoist, said, "The point is the motionless center of a circumference on the rim of which all contingencies, distinctions, and individualities revolve." This inner center or doorway to the inner center has been experienced and expressed many, many times by many people. William Blake had a vision while at the top of Primrose Hill in London. I'm sure we're all aware of this, and what he said about it. "I have conversed with the spiritual son. I saw him on Primrose Hill." So this image is photograph taken from Primrose Hill, inspired by Blake's vision. Some of my work I'll show you will be monochrome, some in color. Nature as a symbol means that nature itself is the doorway. I've really never had visions like Blake did, but my artwork is in one level about visions. Isn't that what art is supposed to communicate? A vision of the other. There can be emotional responses to art, but the highest art transcends sentimentality over emotional worldliness and things highlighting our individuality, our separateness, and the outer irrelevancies and distractions of the outer world. We need to revive a sense of the sacred in us and art and in nature, something which has been missing for a very long time. And also to see beauty as not merely an aesthetic appearance, but as a reflection of what is beyond the human, the truly spiritual. There is no true metaphysics without beauty. Art can aid the sacred within us rather than boosting the individual's ego. It can guide us through this inner journey of contemplation. Much like the image you're looking at now, where the viewer would need to horizontally travel across the sand to reach the doorway, as human beings, we are very much distracted by this horizontal worldly journey. We think that is all there is. But at the same time, the vertical doorway is always there, always has been there, and always will be there. I'm not going to talk all the time about every particular image I show you, but just wanted to say that water is often depicted in my work. Water and sky, the source and reflection. This one's almost the same photograph I showed you earlier. It's more about the sky, this one. This is the whole of the image I showed you right at the beginning. It's of Multi-Uchaf Stone Circle in North Wales. It's a very, very special place to me, which I've been visiting regularly since 1983. I don't know whether anyone else knows of this circle. I first heard about it when I read a book by Keith Critchlow called Time Stands Still. And he was my tutor at the time when I was doing my first degree course a long time ago. And he suggested I should kind of go up there one day. So the following day, me and a couple of friends got in a car and we drove up through the snow to see the circle. And I've been back almost every year since. I highly recommend this site. Another kind of work reflects my interest in the Neolithic people of this country. I'm sure you'll all recognize Silbury Hill in Wiltshire in England. And Silbury Hill again. This was an image I took from near the entrance to West Kennet Long Barrow, looking over towards Avebury itself. This is Callanish, not the most well-known complex of stones at that site, but an outline circle known as Callanish 3, which I visited a few years ago. Now, this next image is essentially the same image, but a slightly different version of it. Now, this next image is very different. I don't know if anyone recognizes where it is, but it's of Paddington Station in London. Quite a different subject matter. It took me a lot of work to remove a lot of the people on the platforms. I generally don't have people in my work. It doesn't really, it's not really what I want, is a load of people. It kind of gets in the way. This is another image. Actually, this image is photographed in South Wales. You're overlooking Swansea. The lights in the distance are Swansea. And anyone with keen eyesight would be able to pick out the DVLA building. But that's just a very, very side note. But this image I call Childhood Dream. And it's about, have I got time? Yes, I've probably got time to tell you the dream. I had it when I was very young, maybe 10, 11, 12 years old. I had it 3 years running on the same night every year on Christmas Eve. And it was, the dream was me walking, which is depicted under the arch there in the center of the picture. I'm walking, it's dark, and I'm walking along a trackway with fields either side. And up ahead, I could see a little village with a few lights on. And then suddenly the sky opened up. And then behind it was blue sky. And 3 angels came out. One was playing a trumpet, one was playing a harp, and the other one was singing. And I had that dream 3 years running on the same night every year, but not since I was 12. So a lot of the geometric images going on in my artwork is taken from slightly older works, just a few years old. And in a little while, I'm going to show you some examples of that slightly older work. Again, sky and sea. Much more water here. Just like the previous image, this is of a beach, very near to where my mother lives on the south coast. I also live on water. I live on a boat on a canal in West London. So water is always very important to me. I'm not going to talk about everyone, but this is another one of my recent artworks. I had an exhibition last summer, 2021, at St. John's Church, Notting Hill in London. I quite like church settings for my work. It seems to kind of work quite well, although, you know, it attracts very few people. But that doesn't matter really, does it? I think the church setting for this work it's a lovely church. So I'd like to show you also some much older work. It's very important because all my work for the last over 40 years is all connected. This is an example of one of my works from when I was at the Royal College of Art. I did this in about 1990. I was on the Visual Islamic and Traditional Arts course run by Keith Critchlow. This is made in egg tempera on gesso. It's about 4 feet across. Another example of one of my egg tempera paintings from the same time. It's about the same size as well, about 4 foot across. With a detail there on the right. At a great risk of embarrassing myself, I thought it would be useful to show some really early work from 40 years ago. This is a small exhibition of my work in 1982, while I was on my first degree course at Wimbledon School of Art. The paintings are all acrylic on canvas. The largest one here, the large rectangle, is 12 foot wide by 6 foot high. In reality, this presentation is not about me. It's not about me as an individual. What I'm trying to get at in my work, and even then I was trying to do it, is beyond the individual. Individuals are recipients and conduits. This and the next couple of artworks I made between, say, 2012 and 2016. These led more directly to what I've done more recently. These are mostly drawings. There's a little bit of gouache or watercolor, but they're drawings on A1 paper, so around 2 foot by 3 feet. They're almost all graphite, pencil. You may see some elements of this work in my more recent work I've just been showing you. And this is purely a drawing, just with pencil. There's a lot of images, secret things I put in here into this work. And when Christine was talking about John Michel and his New Jerusalem, where you had the Stonehenge image, that this also relates to the size of the earth and the size of the moon. And there's one image, one geometric image in this picture, which is of that, but it's very difficult for me to point. I don't know if you can see my pointer, but it's here. This is I think the most recent one is more a painting than a drawing. And I was, there's some architecture in Rome, which was built by Mussolini, which I found at one point very fascinating. And this cubic building just had windows all exactly the same. So I wanted to kind of make this essentially fascist architecture into something a bit more relevant. And I came up with this. And to deal with my personal life at the time, the building was on fire. So, and it also made me think of that with the Grenfell Tower. I've actually taken images of this work against a window with the sun behind it, and the flames really do leap out the windows. So I'm very close to the end. And I just wanted to say that the greater world is beyond us. And as spiritual beings, we're essentially exiles in the world of materiality, in the world of being slaves to our senses. But we will all encounter the eternal at some point in the future. In reality, life itself is the inner journey. And it is also the pilgrimage. And I'd like to end where I started. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. That's so inspiring. It's marvelous to see your works. I really wish I could see them much closer up. In fact, I was sort of peering with my nose about 3 inches from the screen, so I hope my video was turned off. But it's
well, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for speaking to us and sharing your marvelous art. As I look closely, I realized just how incredibly intricate it is. And as you say, possibly, well, obviously containing symbolism of all sorts inside it.
Yes, I haven't really spoken to any great extent about the symbolism. I mean, that's really up to the viewer. Like I said, you know, the viewer can experience art emotionally or in any way the viewer wants to experience the art. So I don't really want to kind of lock them into what I intend. I'm quite happy people to see what they want in them.
Yes,
because I'm not arrogant enough to like want to demand everyone sees the world the way I do. Everyone has their own vision, and
that's
hopefully art can bring that out of not just the artist but the viewer.
Sure. Yes. Christine, did you want to ask a question?
Okay. No, I just wanted to say that that Nicholas makes very beautiful prints. It's a type of printmaking called giclée prints. And the quality of them is really, really beautiful and on lovely paper and not, you know, not so expensive. I mean, you can afford it. It's really, I really recommend,
Thanks for the plug,
everybody
Christine.
getting a print Christmas from Nicholas. Okay.
That's a good plug. Thank you. Well, you can go and have a look on my website. I've got much work on my website and I can be emailed from there if anyone's interested in asking me anything.
Nicholas, what's your website called?
It's www.ncope, that's ncope.co.uk.
That's easy. Okay, well, I recommend everyone goes and has a look at Nicholas's website. So thank you so much. Another thing I wanted to say is that I was slightly reminded of Peter Dawkins' drawings. I'm not sure you're familiar with them, Nicholas.
I'm not that familiar with them, no, but I will certainly have a look. Yeah.
Peter sees amazing angels in the landscape, you know, about 1,000 feet high, which is kind of what well, I was very reminded of that, your pictures of the sun. Very interesting.
Well, they can be described as angels. I mean, the one you're looking at now, definitely that triangle.
Absolutely.
Could easily be an angel. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so that's really lovely.
And in a way, you know, this is perhaps an image of my dream I had when I was very young as well. I'm trying to kind of understand what that was all about by producing work which explores these ideas. So maybe this is my kind of adult version of that kind of prepubescent dream I had.
Yes, maybe
It's possible.
Life is a journey where we're trying to understand our dreams.
Yeah, partly, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Nicholas.